All right. The Santa Cruz. How many are familiar with the expression, that's a righteous dude? A couple of us. Yep, we've heard it. Surfer, you guys have a surfer person, right? I looked it up on the Urban Dictionary, and it means an all-around awesome guy who's fun to be around, usually associated with surfers or other sort of rebellious counter-cultural figures. Apparently everyone loves a righteous dude because he's an all-around, just awesomely cool guy. So does anyone know the origin of the phrase righteous dude? Nope. I was surprised too. I had to Google it. But apparently they attribute it to Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Has everybody seen that movie?
It's amazing.
Yeah. Anyone not seen it? There were. Oh, Jane. Okay. There were a couple people at 8 o'clock who hadn't seen it either. Actually, interestingly, all of the British people hadn't seen it at 8 o'clock. There we go. So Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Classic teenager movie of the middle 80s. About a kid named Ferris who breaks all the rules and always gets away with it. Apparently, he's missed tons and tons of days of school. He's fixed it by hacking into the attendance system so that nobody knows he's been missing all this school. And his parents think he's just the best kid ever. The school, they all think he's pretty cool. You know who gets most frustrated with him and knows he's just not, the best kid ever and gets really mad about him? Who's that?
I said his friend. I don't know. Teacher?
Well, the relationship between him and his friend is complicated and really like one of the best parts of the movie. But it's a little bit more close to home because the one that's most annoyed with him is his sister. Right? Of course, because she's like, how come he always gets away with it? I'm gonna make sure he gets caught this time. And so he's playing hooky from school again. He fools his parents into thinking he's sick, and they're like, oh, poor baby, you stay home and rest. And then as soon as they're gone, he gets up and he calls up, gets his girlfriend excused from school, he gets his best friend excused from school, they borrow the friend's dad's really cool Ferrari, I think it's a Ferrari, anyway, cool car, and they head off into Chicago for the best day ever. Now, the great thing about this movie is he makes all sorts of mischief and he gets away with every last bit of it. It's kind of, it's tame stuff by our standards. What does he do? He goes to a baseball game, takes his friends out to lunch, he goes to an art museum, some great art museum in Chicago, and they watch a parade, which he ends up being in the parade, classic scene. And he makes it back home before his parents find out, by the skin of his teeth. But the other person besides his sister that's determined to get him caught is the principal, the sign of all adult authority against which they are rebelling, right? And that's where this phrase, righteous dude, comes in. Because when the principal, Rooney, finds out that Ferris Bueller is out absent for the day and calling on his friends, he suspects. And he's like, I'm going to catch this kid this time around, no matter what. I'm going to show all those students that he's just a malfeasant, And the secretary, she looks at him, she's like, Ed, all those students, they think that Ferris Bueller's just awesome and that he is, in fact, a righteous dude. So that's where it comes from. It's right in that point in the movie. And how we get this idea of righteousness as being sort of like a little bit rebellious, kind of cool, and getting away with it, right? But that understanding of righteousness has to come from a previous understanding of righteousness, doesn't it? Because they're rebelling against some tradition. And I think what they're rebelling against is our parents' definition of righteous, which, like, if you think about what our parents told us righteousness was, what did it look like?
Following rules.
Following the rules, right? You never once set a toe outside of the line. You were always a good kid. Never rebelled. In fact, you were perfect. Perfect in heart, mind, soul. You did it all right. Exactly, right? Isn't that kind of what they're pushing against, and what that our parents' definition of righteousness was? Well, interestingly enough, I think if we listen to today's readings from Scripture, neither of these definitions of righteousness really get it right from the biblical perspective. Because if we look at everything that's going on today, it seems like what righteousness really means is people who have, in fact, done something wrong, messed up in some way or another, created a breach between themselves and the people that they love, between themselves and God, and they've found a way back from that. They've admitted it, they've rebuilt that relationship, and they've found, in the end, forgiveness from the people they've harmed and from God. They've made reconciliation out of the ways that they've failed. So it seems as if righteousness is not about moral perfection, but rather about a person who can humble themselves, make amends, and seek a new path forward. But I'm getting ahead of myself because I first want to delve into what sin feels like. Because there's some great imagery here. I love that psalm. It captures it really beautifully. The psalm seems to imply that sin, when we are living in sin that we haven't found forgiveness for yet, what it feels like is hiding from God. Hiding from God. Because this person in the psalm is not talking to God when they're in sin, those couple of passages. And it feels like this huge weight that they're carrying, a weight of guilt, because they're avoiding a place or person that might have openly caused them to admit it. And that's the great thing about the Psalms. It could be any one of us, right? Like, it's written in this voice that's just open. But we all know this feeling. I mean, think about the kid who steals the cookie and then they run off and hide. Only, like, the kid is so funny. It's kind of like, I think this is a great image. Because the kid, they're hiding behind the curtain, but of course you can see their foot. They don't know that you can't see their foot. That's like God. God sees us when we're doing this, right? And, it happens to adults too. I mean, think of how many people keep themselves estranged from their parent, their child, their sibling, their church community, just because they're trying to avoid something that they've done. So you can't be in relationship with someone or with God if you're avoiding them. Only, it's clear from this psalm that doing that hiding from the thing that weighs on our hearts and souls, we feel it. We feel it. It's not doing us any good. Here we get all sorts of great images about groaning and the bones withering away. It's like this person is starving because they're hiding from God and whomever they have hurt or harmed. Because when we do that, we're not able to hide from ourselves even. Like, here we are behind the curtain. Maybe our foot's sticking out and God sees it, but we see all of ourselves. We see all of ourselves in the middle of whatever guilt or shame we're carrying for what we've done. I mean, look at that kid who ran away from home in our gospel. I mean, yeah, he was living the high life for a while. And when it comes down to it, partying and pretending that you're all that greatness, you can think that it hides whatever you're feeling inside about, in his case, the family relationship that he's ruptured. But I don't imagine for a minute that he really managed to be successful at that. He's carrying that with him wherever he is. And I'll bet that he might not have even expected his dad to let him get away with it and to say, yes, you can have your inheritance, just like he demanded. But in for a penny, for a pound, because once his dad had said yes, I'm sure he's thinking to himself, well, I'm in it now, I gotta keep going. And I'm sure his conscience was already weighing him down as he walked out of that door. You can kind of hear it in his head, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. And I'll never be able to come home, will I? But he doesn't stop himself. He keeps right on going. I'm not even sure if he was able to say goodbye with a straight face. It might have either been that sort of like, goodbye, without really looking, or alternatively like the cocky, sort of snarky, goodbye, but not a genuine goodbye to his family, because he's breaking this relationship. He's breaking his father's heart as he leaves. And the narrative lets us see the full depths of the hiding that this kid is doing. It starts with all that dissolute living, and so much worse than whatever it was that Ferris Bueller got up to. Nothing innocent here. And it's also, how many of you gotten around to reading the Screw Tape letter for this week, the first one? A couple of us. Letter 13. Good stuff in letter 13. I highly recommend it. Because in that one, it's talking about just the kind of thing that this kid is doing. It calls it fake pleasures. Fake pleasures. Now, Screw Tape, right? He's interested in all of the things that are going to keep their patient, their human being, from actually connecting to God. They want to keep this rift big. And they have had a setback. They've had a setback because the patient has actually done something wrong and admitted to God and found forgiveness. And it turns out that brings you closer to God. So now Screw Tape and Wormwood are actually doing a sort of a, they're looking back at what happened, and they're trying to figure out what could Wormwood have done differently to stop this reconnection from happening. And the first thing he says is, only let him have fake pleasures. Real pleasures come from God. That's the good things that we share when we are in good, right relationship with each other and God. But this kind of stuff, you think it feels good, but it's not. It's not really good. It's the numbing type of pleasure, right? And that's what this kid's doing, is trying to numb out that feeling of I shouldn't have done that. Fake enjoyment. And you know what? It feels cool and rebellious too. But it's really just masking for regret. And then this kid moves up to the next thing that Screw Tape is telling Wormwood, make sure your patient does this, because they could get completely stuck there. And that's the wallowing. I'm the worst. I completely messed this up. His funds for his good times have run out and high life is off the table, so we might as well wallow. I mean, why doesn't he still go home at that point? Why didn't he go home? He's just going to keep hiding. He'd rather feed pigs than eat his humble pie and show up at his father's doorstep at that point. And he beats himself up. Sorry, I'm beating my microphone here for effect. But he's like, mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. But self-hatred, it turns out, Screw Tape's very keen about this, is not true humility. And it does not serve the purpose of getting you to actually go and ask for that forgiveness, does it? Instead, it keeps you focused on you. In fact, Screw Tape says something really wise. He says, self-contempt can be made the starting point for contempt of all other selves as well. All other selves as well. Now, this kid, he's got to be starving. starving before he even considered facing the music with his father. But finally, he gets there. He makes a plan. He's like, okay, I really messed up. I failed God and I failed you, Dad. That's what he's going to say. I'm going to go home and I'm going to be saying, I don't deserve love, but just, please, Dad, just keep me from starving to death. And it's clear that open, welcome offer of forgiveness and love, and I'm so glad you're home, son, that is a complete surprise to him. He never anticipates that's what might happen. See, it turns out that if you reach out by admitting in person that you are the one in fault without expectations, then reconciliation becomes a possible outcome. Now, I say possible because the great thing about parables is they give us two perspectives. Jesus is really amazing about this. Like, this could be about a human family, right? It feels like it could be about a human family. And all the stuff that happens in here is just like a human family. But Jesus is also talking about God, and it works in both ways. So, if we're just looking at the level of a human father or mother, you know what? They might still have stuff to get over themselves, like anger and betrayal, before they're willing to just welcome this kid back with their arms open. Jesus does something clever here because he puts all of that on the older brother in the story. He's the superhuman one here. He goes through all of that stuff for us so we can see what we feel, what we go through when someone comes up and is like, yeah, I messed up, can you just forgive me? But he also has God in here because, you know what? Jesus' point is that God will forgive with open arms, just like that Father did. And that is not fake enjoyment. That is the real party time. Because forgiveness like that feels like unbridled happiness. The psalm puts it just perfectly. Be glad, you righteous, and rejoice in the Lord. Shout for joy, all who are true of heart. Be glad and shout for joy when you have been forgiven and reconciled. See, that kid, now he is finally really a righteous dude, isn't he? He's not perfect, but he has reconciled with God, he has reconciled with his family, and that breach that he created in the relationship, it's starting to heal. It's coming back together. There's still some messy stuff left over, but I hope this prodigal son at least had learned enough that he'll be able to open up some healing with his brother too and have patience for him. So I want to return back to Screw Tape here because Screw Tape, I think, hits one of the important pieces here on the nose. Because Screw Tape would argue that the most important thing that prodigal son did to repair the breach was to actually return home. Screw Tape, as he's strategizing with Wormwood, all the things that he could have done to have kept their patient from returning to God, tells him that the best thing you could have done was to keep the patient feeling all of their regret, but never actually acting on that sense of repentance. He says, if you do that, he will be ours. Right? Good evil laugh. He says the more that the patient feels without acting, the less he will ever be able to act. And in the long run, he will be less able to feel too. So think about it. What if this prodigal son never let himself try? I mean, he could have gone all the way to the point of admitting to himself that he messed up while he's sitting there with the pigs. But famines don't live forever, don't last forever. But he could have spent that whole time wallowing in the dust and thinking up all of the different ways that he could maybe fix things. Imagining all the ways that each one might play out, how his father might react to each and every one, but never ever got up the guts to actually go and talk to his father. See, that takes real vulnerability. That's what humility looks like. Because when you go to someone and say, I'm sorry, I messed this up, it was my fault, you might get rebuffed. But you should do it anyway. You know why? Because Jesus' point is that no matter what, you're not going to get rebuffed by God. God is the one who will pull out all the stops of forgiveness for us. He will run out and meet us with open arms. He'll kill the fatted calf. He will have a party for us and welcome us home every time. And that is what righteousness feels like. It feels like someone who, not perfect, but has messed up and has found their way back to God and made an attempt to make amends with the people that they've harmed. That's a righteous dude. I love the way Paul says it in our letter to the church in Corinth. And of course, Paul, perfect person to put across this message. Paul was the worst of sinners, and he will admit it himself. He does. He was persecuting Christians terribly. And it took Jesus, making him blind for him to notice, but he was forgiven. He knew what it was to feel true righteousness, to have himself reconciled to God in Jesus. And this is what he says. He says, all this is from God who reconciled us to himself through Christ and has given us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them and entrusting the message of reconciliation to us, so that we are ambassadors for Christ. Righteous. That is the invitation to each and every one of us. Not perfect, but able to bring about reconciliation, to admit when we're wrong, and to bring about healing and greater love between us and God, between us and all those that we are traveling through this life with. You know what's great about that kind of reconciliation? It really is awesome.